Never got closure, but I'll walk away a winner regardless. These words appeared on Ashton Neroes' Facebook page at 4:45 p.m. on October 18, 2020. Less than an hour later, police would find his wife, Markeita McCleary Neroes, with 16 gunshot wounds to her upper body. She was 28 years old. Hours earlier, Ashton had posted religious scripture and motivational messages to his followers. His social media presence portrayed him as best dad, a devoted husband, loving father to 3 children, and inspirational Christian figure. Photos showed family vacations, birthday celebrations, and tender moments between husband and wife. The contrast couldn't be more stark. While Ashton crafted this digital narrative of domestic bliss, the reality inside their Mesquite, Texas apartment told a different story. One of control, infidelity, and escalating violence that would culminate in murder. "I killed my wife. I murdered my wife." These were Ashton's words when he turned himself in at Lew Sterrett Jail that same evening. Gone was the polished social media persona, replaced by the cold confession of a man who had just fired 16 bullets into the mother of his children. Their 8-year-old son had heard everything. "I think my dad shot my mom," he told neighbors as he fled the apartment barefoot, desperate for help. This child had witnessed the violent collapse of a facade that had fooled friends, family, and followers for years. The Neroes family tragedy exposes how easily social media can mask domestic violence. A few carefully selected photos, inspirational quotes, and public displays of affection created an illusion that hid a dangerous reality. As we uncover how social media can mask deadly domestic violence, I want to ask, have you ever noticed someone's online persona differing dramatically from their real life? Perhaps you've seen friends posting about perfect relationships while privately confiding their fears. Share your thoughts below. Your observations might help others recognize these dangerous disconnections before they turn deadly. This is the story of Markeita McCleary Neroes, a mother, daughter, and wife whose life was cut short by the man who portrayed himself as her biggest supporter. Born and raised in the Dallas area, Markeita McCleary Neroes was known for her warm smile and devotion to family. At 28, she had built a life centered around her 3 children, whom friends described as her greatest joy and priority. Those who knew her spoke of her determination and resilience, qualities that would define her final months as she sought to rebuild her life. Markeita valued family connections deeply. This was evident when she and Ashton, along with their children, moved in with her parents for a year to save money before relocating to their apartment in Mesquite. This period demonstrated her practical approach to life and her close relationship with her parents, who would later become crucial supporters for her children. "She was always thinking about the future," a friend recalled. "Everything she did was to create stability for her kids." Her marriage to Ashton Neroes had lasted 5 years, and outwardly they appeared to be a success story. Social media posts showed family outings, celebrations, and moments of apparent happiness. Ashton frequently shared photos of their family, positioning himself as a devoted husband and father. For those who only knew them through these carefully selected glimpses, the Neroes family represented relationship goals. But Markeita's reality diverged sharply from these polished posts. Behind closed doors, she navigated increasingly troubled waters. Friends noticed her becoming more reserved over time, less likely to share details about her home life. When she did confide in those closest to her, she revealed growing concerns about Ashton's controlling behavior. Despite these challenges, Markeita maintained her focus on creating a nurturing environment for her children. She remained actively involved in their education and activities, determined that the tensions at home wouldn't disrupt their development and happiness. In the months before her death, Markeita began taking steps toward independence. She consulted with an attorney about divorce proceedings, explored housing options, and confided in trusted friends about her plans to leave the marriage. These actions revealed her courage and resolve to create a better life for herself and her children. Plans that would be tragically cut short on that October evening. Markeita's story is not just one of victimhood, but of strength and determination in the face of mounting fear. Her decision to seek divorce, despite the risks, demonstrated her refusal to accept a life of control and betrayal. This courage would ultimately cost her everything. Ashton cultivated his online persona with meticulous attention. His YouTube channel, branded under the moniker Best Dad, featured videos of family activities and parenting advice. On Facebook, he regularly posted inspirational messages, religious scripture, and family photos that portrayed domestic harmony. To his followers, Ashton embodied the ideal husband and father, devoted, spiritual, and family-centered. "The problem with humanity is everybody wants to be an animal, the GOAT," he wrote in one of his final posts, referencing the acronym for greatest of all time, before urging followers to open that Bible, follow Christ. These religious proclamations reinforced his public image as a moral family man guided by faith. Friends and acquaintances bought into this narrative. Comments on their family photos often expressed admiration, relationship goals, and such a beautiful family. The digital applause reinforced the facade, making it harder for outsiders to imagine the truth behind the posts. "We were all shocked when we heard what happened," one family friend later told reporters. "Their social media made everything look perfect. We had no idea what was really going on." But inside their Mosquito apartment, a different reality played out. While Ashton preached virtue online, at home he questioned the paternity of their youngest child. While he posted about family unity, he engaged in an affair that devastated Markeita. While he shared messages about respect and love, he exerted increasing control over his wife's movements and relationships. This disconnect between public presentation and private behavior created a dangerous isolation for Markeita. How could she convince others she needed help when everyone believed she lived in an ideal marriage? The more Ashton built his online reputation, the more difficult it became for Markeita to be believed when she confided her fears. The disparity reached its peak in the final days of Markeita's life. As Ashton posted about spiritual growth and overcoming challenges, he was purchasing a new firearm. As he shared messages about perseverance, he was internally seething over Markeita's decision to file for divorce. The contrast between his final posts and his actions hours later represents the ultimate exposure of the lie. This pattern is not unique to the Neroes case. Domestic violence experts note that abusers often maintain positive public personas specifically to discredit their victims' accounts. The more admired an abuser is publicly, the less likely others are to believe allegations against them, creating the perfect cover for escalating violence. The breakdown of Markeita and Ashton's marriage occurred gradually, then suddenly. Friends noticed subtle changes first, Markeita becoming quieter at gatherings, Ashton answering questions directed at her, the couple arriving and leaving events separately. These small shifts hinted at growing tensions beneath the surface. The turning point came when Markeita discovered Ashton's affair. This betrayal shattered whatever trust remained in their 5-year marriage. While Ashton continued posting family photos and inspirational messages online, Markeita was privately grappling with heartbreak and uncertainty about her future. She was devastated when she found out, a close friend later revealed. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was realizing their entire relationship might have been built on lies. The affair exposed deeper issues of respect and honesty that had been eroding their relationship for years. For Markeita, it represented the final confirmation that the marriage couldn't be saved. She began confiding in trusted friends about her fears and frustrations, sharing details of Ashton's controlling behavior that had previously remained hidden. Ashton's control manifested in various ways. He monitored Markeita's phone and social media accounts. He questioned her whereabouts and restricted her independence. Financial decisions required his approval, limiting her ability to build resources for potential independence. These tactics, common in abusive relationships, served to isolate Markeita and reduce her options. As Markeita began considering divorce, Ashton's behavior became increasingly volatile. He alternated between making promises to change and expressing anger at her disloyalty for wanting to leave. This emotional whiplash, typical of abusive relationships, left Markeita constantly on edge, never knowing which version of her husband she would encounter. The most troubling development came when Ashton began questioning the paternity of their youngest child. This accusation, which had no basis in reality, served as both emotional manipulation and justification for his growing resentment. It represented a new level of psychological abuse aimed at undermining Markeita's confidence and reputation. Despite these escalating tensions, Markeita took decisive action. She consulted an attorney and began formal divorce proceedings. She documented instances of threatening behavior. She confided in her parents about her fears. These steps demonstrated her determination to break free from the deteriorating relationship. Ashton publicly claimed to support her decision, telling friends and family he wanted Markeita to be happy. "If divorce is what she needs, I respect that," he reportedly told mutual friends. But privately, evidence suggests he was seething with resentment and planning retaliation. The divorce papers found after Markeita's death, alongside the receipt for his newly purchased handgun, told the true story of his response to losing control. The final months of their marriage represented a dangerous period that domestic violence experts identify as the highest risk time for victims, when an abuser fences their losing control and may resort to lethal violence rather than accept rejection. Late August 2020 marked a critical escalation in the Neroes household. During an argument in their Mesquite apartment, Ashton pulled out his Glock handgun while their daughter was present. This wasn't merely a heated exchange between spouses. It was a direct threat with a loaded weapon, witnessed by a child. Markeita's response revealed both her fear and her protective instincts. After the confrontation, she located and hid Ashton's firearm, recognizing the danger it represented. This action, removing a weapon from an increasingly volatile situation, may have temporarily prevented violence, but it also triggered a dangerous response. Following this incident, Ashton disappeared for several days. His absence created a tense uncertainty for Markeita and the children. When he returned, he didn't apologize or acknowledge the severity of brandishing a weapon during an argument. Instead, he took a more ominous step, purchasing a new firearm. The Smith & Wesson .40 caliber handgun Ashton acquired would later become the murder weapon. The receipt found by investigators confirmed he bought it just days after returning home, a deliberate decision to rearm himself after Markeita had taken steps to increase safety in their home. For those who understand domestic violence patterns, these events represent textbook warning signs of potential homicide. Research consistently shows that access to firearms dramatically increases the risk of fatal domestic violence. When combined with other risk factors present in the Neroes case, separation, controlling behavior, threats, and a history of escalating conflict, the danger was severe. Other warning signs accumulated in the weeks before the murder. Ashton's social media posts took on darker undertones with cryptic messages about rebuilding from scratch and references to closure. He increased surveillance of Markeita's activities and expressed growing paranoia about her interactions with others. Friends and family later reflected on missed opportunities for intervention. "We knew things were bad," one family member said, "but we didn't realize how dangerous the situation had become." As we examine these warning signs, I want to ask, what country or state are you watching from, and what resources for domestic violence victims exist in your area? Your comment could help someone in danger. Many communities have emergency shelters, legal aid services, and crisis hotlines, but awareness of these resources remains a critical gap in addressing domestic violence. The gun incident in August should have been recognized as a 5-alarm fire, a clear indicator that lethal violence was a real possibility. Instead, like many warning signs in domestic violence cases, it was minimized and rationalized, with tragic consequences. By October, Markeita was taking concrete steps toward divorce, unaware that Ashton's new firearm represented his own plans for their separation, plans that would unfold with devastating finality on October 18th. Sunday, October 18, 2020 began as an ordinary day. Nothing in the morning hours suggested it would end in tragedy. Ashton Neroes was active on social media, posting religious messages and cryptic statements that would later take on darker meaning. At 4:45 p.m., Ashton made what would become his final post before the murder. "Never got closer, but I'll walk away a winner regardless." Less than an hour later, Markeita would be fighting for her life. Around 5:00 p.m., Markeita returned to their Mesquite apartment with their 8-year-old son. The other children weren't home at the time, a detail that would later seem like a small mercy amid the horror. Markeita and Ashton moved to their bedroom while their son played in another room of the apartment. What began as a conversation quickly escalated into an argument. Neighbors would later report hearing raised voices, though this wasn't unusual from the Neroes' apartment. What happened next, however, was unprecedented. The 8-year-old boy later told investigators he heard his mother scream his nickname in desperation. The terror in her voice made him freeze. Then came the sounds that would haunt him forever, a rapid succession of gunshots, 16 in total, as Ashton emptied his .40 caliber Smith & Wesson into Markeita's body. Forensic evidence would later show that the shots were clustered in Markeita's upper torso, abdomen, and upper arms. The pattern suggested Ashton continued firing even after Markeita had fallen. The medical examiner would determine that several of the wounds would have been independently fatal. In a display of remarkable courage and presence of mind, the 8-year-old boy fled the apartment. Barefoot and terrified, he ran to neighbors, gasping out the words, "I think my dad shot my mom." The neighbors immediately called 911 and reporting the shooting at approximately 5:34 p.m. Police arrived within minutes to find Markeita grievously wounded. Emergency medical personnel transported her to a local hospital, but the extensive damage from multiple gunshot wounds proved unsurvivable. Markeita McCleary Neroes was pronounced dead that evening. Her life ended at 28 years old. Ashton's behavior after the shooting was chillingly composed. Rather than fleeing in panic or remaining at the scene, he calmly collected his son, put him in the car, and drove to Markeita's parents' home. There he left the boy on the porch, shoeless and without a shirt, before driving away without explanation. This calculated action, ensuring his son was safely delivered to grandparents rather than left with neighbors or police, suggested a man still in control of his faculties, making deliberate choices even after committing murder. It contradicted any later claims of temporary insanity or emotional breakdown. From there, Ashton drove directly to the Lou Sterrett jail in Dallas County, where he surrendered himself. His words to the deputy were direct and unambiguous. "I killed my wife. I murdered my wife." There was no claim of accident, self-defense, or confusion, just a straightforward confession to an intentional act. The timeline from final social media post to surrender spanned less than 2 hours, a brief period in which 3 children lost their mother, parents lost their daughter, and a community lost its illusions about the perfect family they had admired online. As news of the shooting spread through Miski's, friends and followers of the Neroes family expressed disbelief. The couple's social media presence had created such a convincing facade that many initially assumed the reports were mistaken. "This can't be the same family," one commenter wrote on a news article. "They were so happy together." Police secured the apartment as a crime scene, documenting the evidence that would build their case. 8 shell casings were recovered, though the medical examiner would later confirm 16 entry wounds. This discrepancy suggested Ashton had collected some of the casings before leaving, another indication of calculated behavior rather than blind rage. The murder weapon was conspicuously absent. During later questioning, Ashton claimed he couldn't remember where he had discarded the gun. Despite extensive searches, the Smith & Wesson .40 caliber handgun was never recovered, likely thrown into one of the many bodies of water in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. While investigators processed the apartment, Markeita's parents faced the devastating task of comforting their traumatized grandson while absorbing the news of their daughter's murder. The boy's account of hearing his mother's final moments became crucial testimony, though authorities worked to minimize his additional trauma during the investigation. In the days following the murder, Markeita's father made a significant discovery while gathering his daughter's belongings: divorce documents and a receipt for the handgun Ashton had purchased after the August incident. These items provided critical context for the prosecution, establishing both motive and premeditation. The investigation revealed that Ashton had made no attempt to disguise his actions or establish an alibi. His direct confession at the jail simplified certain aspects of the case, though prosecutors still needed to establish the degree of the crime. Was this a heat of passion killing or a premeditated murder? Evidence increasingly pointed to the latter. The gun purchase weeks before, the collection of some shell casings after the shooting, the calm delivery of his son to grandparents, and the direct confession all suggested a man who had contemplated his actions and their consequences. Investigators also examined the couple's digital footprint. Ashton's social media posts in the days and hours before the murder took on new significance. What had seemed like typical inspirational content now read as potential farewell messages or justifications for what he was planning to do. Friends and family were interviewed, revealing the stark contrast between the couple's public image and private reality. Many expressed guilt for not recognizing the danger Markeita faced. "We saw the posts about family and faith," one friend told detectives. "We never imagined he was capable of this." The medical examiner's report provided the final grim details. The 16 gunshot wounds indicated not just an intent to kill, but an overwhelming rage, continuing to fire long after Markeita had fallen and could no longer pose any conceivable threat. This excessive force would become a key point in the prosecution's case, demonstrating the deliberate nature of the killing. Within weeks, prosecutors had assembled enough evidence to charge Ashton Neroes with first-degree murder, setting the stage for a trial that would expose the dangerous reality behind a carefully constructed social media illusion. The trial of Ashton Neroes began with a stark contrast. Prosecutors presented evidence of 16 gunshot wounds, while the defense attempted to portray a man who had simply lost control during an argument. The Dallas County courtroom fell silent as crime scene photos revealed the brutal reality of Markeita's final moments. Ashton's defense strategy hinged on minimizing premeditation. His attorneys acknowledged the killing but argued for a lesser charge, suggesting the shooting resulted from sudden passion rather than calculated intent. This distinction could have significantly reduced his sentence, if successful. On the witness stand, Ashton maintained the persona he had cultivated online, soft-spoken, respectful, and seemingly remorseful. He testified that he had supported Markeita's decision to divorce, claiming he wanted her to be happy. This statement drew audible reactions from Markeita's family, who knew the controlling behavior that had defined their daughter's final months. "He's still performing," Markeita's mother whispered to a family member during testimony, "still trying to maintain the image." The prosecution methodically dismantled this performance. They presented the receipt for the gun purchased after Markeita had hidden his previous weapon. They showed the divorce papers found by Markeita's father. Most damaging were Ashton's own social media posts in the hours before the murder, particularly his statement about never getting closure, but walking away a winner regardless. "These are not the words of a man who supported his wife's decision," the prosecutor argued. "These are the words of a man who had decided that if he couldn't have her, no one would." The testimony of the couple's 8-year-old son, presented via closed-circuit television to protect him from further trauma, proved particularly powerful. His simple description of hearing his mother call his name, followed by lots of loud bangs, left many jurors visibly moved. Forensic evidence further strengthened the prosecution's case. The clustering of gunshot wounds indicated Ashton had continued firing even after Markeita had fallen. The missing shell casing suggested he had taken time to collect some of them, an act inconsistent with blind rage or temporary insanity. After 5 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 7 hours before returning their verdict, guilty of murder. The conviction carried a potential sentence of 5 to 99 years. During the sentencing phase, Markeita's parents and siblings provided victim impact statements describing the devastating effects of her murder on the family, particularly her 3 children. "These kids will grow up without their mother because the man who was supposed to protect her decided to take her life instead," Markeita's father told the court. The judge sentenced Ashton Neroes to 50 years in prison and imposed a $10,000 0-cent fine. Under Texas law, he must serve at least half his sentence before becoming eligible for parole, ensuring he will remain incarcerated until he is at least 53 years old. As Ashton was led from the courtroom, the facade he had maintained throughout the trial finally cracked. The composed, respectful demeanor gave way to visible anger, a glimpse of the true personality that Markeita had feared in her final months. For Markeita's family, the verdict brought legal closure but could never fill the void left by her absence. The focus shifted to healing the 3 children who would grow up without their mother, with Markeita's parents taking on primary caregiving responsibilities. The murder of Markeita McCleary Neroes exposes a modern danger: how social media can create perfect cover for domestic abuse. While Ashton crafted an online identity as best dad and devoted husband, behind closed doors he wielded control, manipulation, and ultimately deadly violence. This digital deception isn't unique to the Neroes case. Domestic violence experts increasingly recognize social media as a tool abusers use to maintain their public reputation while isolating victims. The more admired an abuser is publicly, the less likely others are to believe allegations against them. We see this pattern repeatedly, explains domestic violence advocate Jennifer Torres. The abuser posts loving family photos on the same day they're terrorizing their partner at home. This creates a powerful silencing mechanism. Who would believe the victim when everyone sees such a perfect relationship online? This disconnect creates specific challenges for victims seeking help. When Markeita confided in friends about Ashton's controlling behavior, many struggled to reconcile these accounts with the inspirational family man they saw on Facebook. Some likely dismissed her concerns as exaggeration or normal relationship stress. The timing of Markeita's murder during October, National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, adds a layer of tragic irony. While organizations nationwide were sharing resources and raising awareness, Markeita was living the reality of escalating abuse that would ultimately claim her life. For those concerned about loved ones, certain warning signs deserve immediate attention: controlling behavior disguised as care or protection, isolation from friends and family, financial control or monitoring, extreme jealousy or accusations of infidelity, rapid mood swings and unpredictable anger, access to weapons, particularly firearms. The presence of firearms creates particular danger. Research consistently shows that access to guns increases the risk of fatal domestic violence by 500%. When Ashton purchased a new handgun after Markeita hid his previous weapon, this represented a critical escalation that demanded intervention. The most dangerous period in abusive relationships occurs during separation. When Markeita filed for divorce, her risk increased dramatically. This pattern is so consistent that domestic violence experts have a term for it: separation assault, the escalation of violence when an abuser fences losing control. For those in dangerous relationships, safety planning is essential. This includes securing important documents, establishing emergency contacts, creating code words with trusted friends, identifying safe locations, connecting with local domestic violence resources. Markeita's story reminds us that domestic violence crosses all demographic boundaries. It affects people of all backgrounds, education levels, and socioeconomic statuses. The carefully constructed social media presence that portrayed the Neroes as a perfect family demonstrates how easily abuse can hide behind digital facades. Today, 3 children navigate life without their mother. The oldest, who witnessed the immediate aftermath of his mother's murder, carries memories no child should bear. The youngest, whose paternity Ashton cruelly questioned, will never know Markeita beyond photographs and stories shared by loving grandparents. These children represent the enduring victims of domestic violence, lives forever altered by one person's decision to end another's life. Markeita's parents have stepped forward as primary caregivers, transforming their grief into purpose by creating stability for their grandchildren. "We're keeping Markeita alive through how we raise her children," her mother explained in a community forum on domestic violence. "They'll know she fought to protect them until her last breath." The digital footprint of the Neroes family remains online, a ghostly archive of family photos, inspirational quotes, and religious messages that once fooled friends and followers. These posts now serve as a cautionary tale about the gap between curated online personas and private realities. Some friends have preserved these images, using them in educational settings to demonstrate how effectively social media can mask abuse. Ashton's final post: "Never got closure, but I'll walk away a winner regardless." has been analyzed by domestic violence experts as a classic expression of the proprietary attitude abusers hold toward their victims. The statement reveals his perception that Markeita belonged to him, that her decision to leave constituted a competition he refused to lose. The community response to Markeita's murder has included increased funding for domestic violence prevention programs in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Local organizations report higher engagement with educational materials about warning signs and safety planning. Several churches that once followed Ashton's inspirational posts now host support groups for abuse survivors. The annual Domestic Violence Awareness Month has taken on new significance in Mesquite. The annual awareness walk now includes a special tribute to Markeita, with participants carrying photos of victims whose lives were cut short by intimate partner violence. Markeita's story reminds us that what we see online rarely tells the whole story. By subscribing and sharing this video, you're helping raise awareness about domestic violence hidden behind social media facades. What warning signs do you think are most important to recognize? Your insights could save someone's life. Perhaps the most powerful legacy of Markeita's life is found in the increased vigilance among those who knew her. Friends who missed the warning signs in her relationship now speak up when they notice concerning patterns in others. Family members who wished they had intervened more forcefully now understand that uncomfortable conversations might save lives. Markeita McCleary Neroes was more than a victim. She was a mother who loved her children fiercely, a daughter cherished by her parents, a friend remembered for her warmth and resilience. Her life mattered, and her death serves as a powerful reminder that behind perfect social media presentations, real people face real dangers that demand our attention and action.